are you, sir?
I'm doing well. It's good to be in the studio with you today. And many hospitals in the rural area
Welcome. Good afternoon, and welcome to We Believe Digital Newsbreak. We are sure glad you're joining us here from very sunny, 90-degree, no precipitation in sight, Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South. And alongside me today, I have a Mr. Socrates Garrett. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing really well. How are you, Chris?
I never had it so good, Mr. Garrett. I'm a very lucky guy, and I just try to think of the glass as being half full.
Okay.
No matter what we see around us. And we just take a second just to remind the viewers that, we have so many programs running out of this studio, and I like to think of it a lot of times giving voice to the voiceless. We have provided scholarships to programs for people to come in and get their message out and have their voice heard, and that's probably on a ratio of about 4-to-1 for paying customers. So when you go to our if you're appreciating the programming and you like what you're seeing and hearing, and you picking up what we're putting down, that we try to go a little bit beneath the headlines, please visit our WeBelieveDigital.com website and hit that donate button, because God knows there are expenses to operate in a studio like this, and so we thank you for giving that some consideration. Well, Mr. Garrett, we've got there's one issue on the global level that I wanted to just mention in case it wasn't picked up by people, but in the United Kingdom, they have now the Black Equity Organization. It's the very first black civil rights organization in the United Kingdom, and I find that to be very interesting. What say you?
Well, apparently the civil rights struggle in England is different than civil rights struggles in America, and that's evident by the fact that African Americans haven't felt the need to push as hard for changes in legislation. So, I really would like to better understand the race relations in the United Kingdom and how it compares to the U.S. and what is the African American population in that area.
It's much smaller than ours here, and you hear stories from time to time come out about incidents there, especially around London, that are clearly racially motivated, but not that often.
No, and you indicate that the African American population is smaller in the UK than it is in America?
Oh, by far. Yeah, I don't have a number off the top. The last time I looked at it was well below 10%. I can't cite that for sure right now.
I would have thought it would have been just the opposite.
No.
I mean, with the continent of Africa being, there, that it would be easier for African Americans to be in England than it would be in New York.
No, not the case. Now I'll double back on that and double check that. But it's interesting, as always. You bring that layer of thought process that we just don't see all the time, and I can't help but be reminded that it was a company called the Virginia Company, a company founded in the United Kingdom that brought the first settlers over here to, a lot of people say Jamestown, but Point Comfort in Virginia. So they had a goal and a mission to establish these in this new world, these colonies and all, and they founded the company with the name Virginia before Virginia was even known, if you will.
Really?
Which eventually led to, slavery.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of history here, that we need to do research on and get a clearer understanding of what life is really like for African Americans in other parts of the country. Mm-hmm. How the struggle has differed from the one in America. The struggle in the South is different than the one in the Northeast. And so we certainly owe it to our viewers and our listeners to bring them some information in regards to that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The next story is on a national level. Last week, an armed, we by necessity, we always talking about crime on this show, and last week a fellow showed up outside a Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh's home in Delaware, and he was armed, and apparently he was up to no good, and nothing happened, but he was arrested for attempted murder, and now, poof, like magic, legislation was introduced to give the Supreme Court justices and their families more protection, and that yesterday passed through the House of Representatives and is now under consideration by the Senate. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, America is becoming more and more violent, and we have on the brink of civil war in this country, where this country is evenly divided with different philosophies, and the Supreme Court justices don't reflect the will of the American people. And so I'm not surprised that there are incidents and occurrences where they get some pushback, because I think they're out of tune with the American people. And so this is one of those things that bears watching. The Supreme Court has been in the news lately with leakage on the Roe versus Wade issue, which is going to tear this country apart. And there are many people out here that believe that the country has been, quite frankly, taken away or hijacked by the government, and the Supreme Court is that judicial branch of the government that is a part of everything that's happening. So my thoughts are that we need to be alert, and that America needs to pay attention. We need to pay attention to all of the dissidents and all of the people that felt like they're disenfranchised. That not only goes for African Americans, but it goes for the Proud Boys, and it goes for anybody in this country who feels that there's an orchestrated attempt to suppress their rights and deprive them of what we hold so dearly in the American dream, and that's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Mm-hmm. And so when people feel like they're not being able to access that, then you get all kind of crazy people doing crazy things. And
they, really, as in the judicial branch, they're the keepers of the Constitution, but you don't see the diversity there. There's one Hispanic female, and there's one African American male.
Yeah.
So 7 out of the 9 justices are European Americans.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the Constitution had diversity in mind when it was written either. Right. And so I think that the danger here is that the Supreme Court has been politicized, mm-hmm. and it does not reflect the views of the majority of Americans, and that's where you get in real trouble. Mm-hmm. If you are now of a conservative sway a philosophy, and 60% of the country voted in the other direction, then there's going to be conflict.
Right. And Mr. Garrett, I just realized I misspoke because we have Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson coming in, and so that will be 2 African Americans on the court and one Hispanic. And as far as this protection goes, I was noting that we have 2 senators here in the Magnolia State, Senator Roger Wicker and Senator Cindy Hyde Smith, both European Americans, and they were asked this morning by a major news outlet, broadcast outlet, cable outlet, how they feel about this bipartisan gun safety compromise going on, I think those 2 issues are related, and they're non-committal on that. When you're talking about gun safety compromise, and the 2 Republican senators from Mississippi are non-committal on the compromise.
Well, I think that the Second Amendment issue is one of those issues that divides family members. And while I think everybody agrees that something has to be done because we're getting too many incidents of mass shootings, so the country knows that there's something that has to be done. However, the fight over the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, is one of those things that is held sacred by more people in the South, in the conservative states, than it would be in the West Coast and on the East Coast. And, we need to understand that. Guns, the senator from Mississippi, Roger Wicker, and by the way, I hope he's doing better. I heard that he came down with a case of COVID, so we wish him a speedy recovery, and so that they can find a way. I know they have to represent their constituents, and this gets to be a touchy issue, Chris. People are elected to represent the views of their constituency. That being said, then Wicker and Cindy Hyde Smith are doing that. And there is pushback against elected officials that go against the will of their constituency. You see it in the national politics and all the way down through local politics. For example, even at your local government, your president of your city council voted to award a contract to an African-American firm for garbage collection. And then after political pressure, voted not to approve payment to the same company that she voted for.
Right.
And so these people are playing and dancing to the music of those that sent them there. And I don't know how we're going to change that. I think what disappoints me more is that African-American elected officials don't dance and sing and promote the views of the people who sent them there. And so we're going to have to wade our way through this. This contradicting philosophies that we have in this country that's 50-50 divided.
Yes, I hear you. It gets awfully deep, and try to get an understanding of it. It defies. It keep you up at night sometimes, and the whole nature of politics, of course, to influence, the outcomes of what we do in our government and so forth. It's really complicated. It's hard to follow, and just yesterday there were some primaries in states, and there were there was I believe it was South Carolina, where a 10-year incumbent in the U.S. House of Representatives was ousted. In this case, I think he had voted for either impeachment of the last president or had voted for the January 6th committee or something like that, and boom, out on his ear after 10 years in office.
White Republican, I believe.
No question. Yeah.
And the Republican Party exacted revenge for his behavior swiftly.
Yeah, I was on the phone yesterday with a Mississippi state senator, and he told me a story, where he had found a moderate Republican to co-author a bill with him, and it was a modest bill, but it was something that would be helpful to people that are in tough straits and receiving assistance and so forth, and if they could set aside some of their, if they could create just a little savings account, with their meager funding coming in, if they could create just a meager savings account, this bill would provide for the state to match that savings account. That's that dedicated savings that couldn't be touched. That was for the future. And lo and behold, one of the colleagues of that moderate Republican that wasn't so moderate got a hold of that and went right to the news media. And next thing you know, this senator was telling me Monday morning came around, and his partner in the legislature said, "Look, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to back off because it was all over the news that he's not representing our values," just like you said.
Exactly. Well, Chris, we've come up on a break. Our engineers are signaling us that it's time for us to talk a little bit about our sponsors and those who make these shows possible. So after this break, we'll be right back.
Advertise on WeBelieve.global, a brand new digital media platform. Share your brand with our audience on our many global live stream TV broadcasts and over the radio. For more info, visit WeBelieve.global or call 800-492-5186, option 1.
Welcome back. We are glad to have you here. We're all starting to get a little excited here because we've coming up on the Juneteenth weekend. There's enormous amount of events going on in Jackson, off Ellis Avenue, out at the New Horizon Church International, call it New Horizon on the Hill, and Bobby Rush is going to be out there. Has a show on Saturday night. The Mississippi Mass Choir. No disrespect, but they really have no peer in gospel music, have been around for so long. They have a concert on Sunday, and there's going to be fireworks on Friday night. There's expositions, all kinds of things going on out there, and it is totally free to the public. Now, if you want to have a VIP package, I think it's about $100, and you'll get special parking, and you'll get seating up front, and meals thrown in, and that sort of thing. But for the general public, it's a free event throughout the entire weekend, and lots of seminars and financial information, goods and services being sold, available to people out there. So all you have to do is go to eventbrite.com. Put your first name, your last name, and your email, and click the button, and they'll send you, in your email, they'll send you your ticket. And again, it's totally free. So just reminding people of that for this weekend. Well, Mr. Garrett, one of the things that caught my eye, and I just don't know in comparison with other states, but this institutions of higher learning here, and so much of what goes on in Mississippi regarding our economics is connected to our education system. And the institutions of higher learning trustees board was established in 1943, and recently this Joint Legislative Committee on Performance and Expenditure, the PEER, what we call the PEER, which most states have that. I know Virginia did, where I recently moved from. They just issued a 69-page report on the performance and expenditures at the 8 public universities here in Mississippi, and they also have governance, if you will, over UMMC and the medical college, and so issued a 69-page report for the legislature to consider, but they have no recommendations. How about that? They
Wow.
did a complete review, but they really don't have anything urgent to recommend.
Well, I mean, it's difficult to understand when you last in most categories that you would have to come up with creative ideas and concepts in order to try and move Mississippi forward from an education standpoint. The lack of good schools is one of the primary deterrents to economic development in an area. There are a couple things there that businesses pay a lot of attention to. One of those is certainly crime, but the other one is the education system. People want to move in an area where their children can receive quality educations, and CEOs of major companies are not going to move their families in an area where they don't feel that's happening. So it disappoints me that they didn't come up with any recommendations. But I will tell you this, Chris, Mississippi has 8 primary universities, as you said. And in all of those 8 universities, we have fewer students than they have at UCLA.
So that tells you something about the overall quality of the education?
No, it tells you more about how Mississippi was established and run during the days that the IHL was created. And their primary purpose then was to make certain that African-American children did not go to school with European children or white children. And so they created these concepts and these duplicity of universities that we have universities that sits on top of less than 30 miles away. And we have that in several locations. In the Mississippi Delta, there's Delta State and Mississippi Valley State University. I mean, you could throw a rock between the two. And down in Starkville, there was Mississippi University, Mississippi State, and MUW, Mississippi Women's College, and they wanted to keep those separated. And so we're in a bad situation, and as a state, we don't know how to get out of it. Because you will get tremendous opposition from our citizens if you talk about consolidations of universities. And many college presidents have been run out of the area because they dared to talk about the need for consolidations.
But, if I can just add in, recently, the state auditor issued a report talking about the brain drain, I think is very much connected to what you're talking about. And so wouldn't it be part of these universities' ethos to make recommendations to affect that, so that people aren't just picking up their diploma the ones that do come, and exiting the state and heading over to Nashville or Birmingham or Atlanta or, somewhere else. But they don't seem to take that on as a mission.
No, they don't take it on as a mission, and that's why you got no recommendations from that group. Mm-hmm. And so the mission, it's almost to maintain the way things have been in our education system since 1940s.
Yeah.
And, the Constitution did not guarantee an education to children. And so every state deals with it differently. Mm-hmm. And Mississippi has been living under the effects of racism and discrimination and its ideology to keep children separated. Mm-hmm. So, and now you've got this situation and you don't know how to get out of it. Mm. We are overburdened with too much government. Now, I don't want to sound like a Republican sitting here, but our government is out of control in relationship to the population that it serves.
139 state agencies in Mississippi.
Far too many agencies.
For less than 3 million people.
Far too many universities. Mm-hmm. If you have fewer students than they have at UCLA, mm-hmm. then where you have one president and one vice president, here we have 8 presidents and 8 vice presidents and 8 various staffs. Mm-hmm. And the curriculum does not represent the needs of the students.
And this board of trustees selects the presidents.
Pretty much so,
following
the recommendation from the governor. Mm. The governor whispers,
right,
and they pretty much acquiesce.
Yeah.
Because the governor appoints the board members.
Sure.
And so anytime you get a situation like that, people are loyal to the appointee.
When they originated the institutions of higher learning in Mississippi, they had the terms for these trustees were 12 years. Mm. 20 years ago, that shifted down to nine-year terms. Now, how many boards do you hear of with any kind of regularity that have a 9-year term?
Well, it's far too long. Far too long. And so, one of the things that is going to have to be looked at by the citizens is term limits and recall laws that allow citizens to correct things that they see that are moving in the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. And IHL is one of those agencies that weighs too much influence and power over the things that are occurring in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. Jackson State University has probably had 4 presidents in the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that kind of displacement, it doesn't serve the university well. Mm-hmm. And it pretty much is done at the whim of the college board. Mm-hmm. So something needs to change.
I noticed a few months ago, Dr. Harvey, who has been the president of what started out as Hampton Institute up in Hampton, Virginia, retired. He had been there for 30 years, and Hampton Institute is a very historical place, later became Hampton University, and the stability and the growth as you drive there and drive through the campus and all, and this is really Hampton University is located 10 miles, maybe less than 10 miles from Point Comfort, where the very first slave ships arrived.
Wow.
But there's something there to that steadiness, on the tiller there, something there.
Yeah, and it's something there when people have a voice mm-hmm. in how things are going to be done. And so you mentioned Hampton University. So you have these incidents of Tougaloo College You have Hampton University. You have Fisk University over there. You got Morehouse and Spelman over there. Those schools operate with greater autonomy in terms of what its curriculum looks like and what it is teaching its students. And your presidents have greater longevity, and the stability is there. And so that model has served African American children well over the past 150 years.
Well, we're starting to wind down a little bit, Mr. Garrett, but I know, being an Army veteran, you just love it when I bring up anything having to do with the U.S. Navy. And just this week, I mean, literally in less than a 7-day period, the Navy has fired 5 commanding officers. Now, some of these were in charge of shore commands. One of them was a recruiting and training command, and the other ones were U.S. ships. To have 5 commanding officers fired in less than a week, and they don't go into detail about that. They simply say this statement. They've been saying it for years and years. That loss of confidence in ability to command. Now, one of those commanding officers at sea was a black male, and so something's going on in the military when you see 5 commanding officers relieved of command inside of 7 days.
Well, yeah, something is clearly going on, but as you say, I'm Army. Yeah. And so we didn't see much of the Navy when I was in the Army. Matter of fact, we wondered what you guys were doing over there.
Well, we looked for you all the time, but they said they were having nap time or something, so we didn't disturb you.
Well, yeah, so, if it wasn't for the Marines and the Army, I don't know where this country would be today. Yeah. But anyway, we support the service that you've given as a Navy officer and a Navy enlisted man. And I don't know what's going on over there, but, leadership needs to be changed out.
Well, yes, sir. And, it's so interesting, too, because just like that, they can do an investigation. I don't know if they're that lengthy. They can do an investigation and poof, just like that, leadership changes immediately.
Yeah.
We don't have that in other areas of our society.
Well, the military and the Secretary of Defense, are a different group of people. And we go back to Oliver North and the things that were going on inside of our military that were completely and totally out of control. And so they have so much autonomy into what they do over there until sometimes absolute power is very corrupting. And we've seen that, and I would imagine that this is a demonstration of that absolute power.
Absolutely, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, we certainly thank you for. I thank you for sitting alongside me when we do this show. It's a real privilege for me, and we thank you for tuning in and listening. We hope you have a great day today. Remember to go. Those of you in the metro area, please remember to go to eventbrite.com. Free ticket for the Juneteenth. That'll be here before you know it. And so we'll sign off for today and say thank you very much and wish you a safe day. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. It's good to be in the studio with you today.